Hey, everybody. I'm excited because my friend Leigh Steinberg has a new book out called The Comeback. And we're going to talk about, with Leigh, his comeback and the book. Leigh, first of all, thank you again for inviting me to your great Super Bowl party in San Francisco. And thanks for being my friend for all these years.
My pleasure.
And let's talk about The Comeback. And I've read excerpts from it. I've got it on order. It hasn't arrived yet. But I feel like I know the story because I've known you for so long. But what, given the fact that you wrote The Agent and other books, and w- what is the message with this one compared to, say, The Agent, which, by the way, I love? And you know,
So, The Agent was an autobiography. This is a book about resilience. It's the fact that life will set us all back. We might have reverses that are health, or it could be financial, or it could be marital or relationships, or it could be, as in my case, substance abuse. But life will knock you back. And notwithstanding our best planning, there may come a point in life where you find yourself in a very different situation you ever thought you'd be. And then the question is, can you be resilient? Can you find a way to come back? So I wrote this book to try to help people with their own life struggles. And so it shows my struggle with alcohol and talks about how I was able to come back from it.
what would you say in your life was the aha moment where you said, you know, I've got to turn this around, and I can turn it around?
So I was sitting on my father's bed in West Los Angeles. I'd closed down my condo. I'd shut down my business and given it to the younger agents. And I was experiencing financial reversals. And the only thing on my mind, because the cravings were so strong, was where I could find more vodka. And I had an epiphany at some point. My father raised me with two core values. One was treasure relationships, especially family. And the second was to try to make a meaningful impact in the world, heal pain, and help people who couldn't help themselves. And it struck me that I wasn't being very successful on either of those counts. And I had an epiphany that was about proportionality, comparing my situation. And I realized I wasn't a starving peasant in Somalia. I didn't have the last name Steinberg in Nazi Germany. I was relatively healthy, notwithstanding the alcohol. And what excuse did I have not to live up to those core values? And the key to this all, Zenny, was to break denial. Denial is a process that tells us we don't have a problem. Other people may have a problem, but we don't have a problem. And so I needed to come to the point where I realized I was powerless with alcohol and my life had become unmanageable. And once I was able to do that, then it was all about taking a plan and how to recover.
Now, there's something that I'd like to add because we know each other for a long time, but I'll say this. What I always felt uh, in talking with you, being around you, being at your parties, everything else, um, is you built, it's not just on a legacy, but you built an expression of a person who wasn't afraid to go for it. Okay. And in in all the years I've known you, the one thing that I got from you and others and people I met through you was that same message. Go for it. And so the one thing I want to say is I want to thank you for that and remind you, because sometimes when you write these accounts and books, I think it's important that we as friends remind you of how important you are to us and that there's nothing wrong, or the reason why we choose you as a friend. And it's because you represent how we want to see ourselves. Okay.
So, Jenny, I've led a very charmed life. I built a practice with 64 first round NFL draft picks, the very first pick in the first round 8 times, 12 players in the Hall of Fame, a big baseball practice with a lot of top draft picks, basketball, boxing, and did sports themed motion pictures and wrote books, and the athletes I work with had raised almost $1.3 billion for charity. So it's about making a difference in the world. But then there came a time when my father, who was a central figure in my life, died a long, tough death of esophageal cancer. In close succession, my 2 oldest boys were diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa, which is an eye disease that rendered them blind. And then we had a house in Newport Beach, in a beach city, that had mold in it. And it was our dream house, and we had to knock it to the ground. And that confluence of events made me feel I was powerless. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't save my father. It was probably grandiose to think I could have, but I couldn't prevent my kids from going blind. I couldn't provide a home for us that was safe. And that broke me down. And I turned to the wrong thing, which was alcohol. And that's where the juncture came.
And that's, I'm going through something like that with my mother. I believe I can save her, and I can say I've done that twice. And those are the places where you find who you are. But the one thing that I think about when I reach for my drivers, I think about my relationship with yourself, with my friend Keith Johnson, with Lauren, I think of with Beth, with Randy Gordon, who's on the picture here. Randy is a giant champion for you. he's a good man. I think of the blessings of good people that I've had around and what I've been able to learn from you. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned is, Leigh, is that you're good at giving who you are. And it comes out in your books. It comes out in the time that you spend with people. And I think if whoever gets this book will get that too,
See, at the end of the day, what became really clear to me was that fame, fortune, newspaper clippings, all of that would fade. It was ephemeral. And what I'd be left with was family, friendships, friends who were there in a time of crisis, friends who were there when it was uncomfortable to be a friend. Because I sure didn't recover alone. I recovered surrounded by really nurturing people. And the other thing is what I've done in terms of trying to solve problems and help people who are in pain. And that's it at the end of it. That's what there is. So it's pretty clear to me that my recovery was staying sober and being a good parent. And whatever would happen career-wise was just a cherry on top.
And then also your kids. Katie's your big champion, and you've done an incredible job with her. She's a great person.
Well, if you think about it, really, parenting's our most sacred mission on this planet. And raising kids with self-respect, with security, who are not afraid to go live out their dreams, is really the key.
And you've got so many people now who out there, I meet them regularly, uh, who are suffering from drug addiction. They feel like they don't know a way out. How do we help them out? How do we help them find their center?
So, how I recovered was to break denial.
Mm,
A couple weeks ago, I just celebrated my 16th year of continuous sobriety. But break denial, and then I went to a unique fellowship that operates on a 12-step program. And if someone works those steps, they'll uh, recover. And if they zealously do that. And what I would say to people out there is you're not alone. There are squadrons, legions of people that will help you. You don't have to do this by yourself. There are organizations, 12-step programs, and meetings and groups that will help sustain you. So, my message to people is don't give up hope. No matter how menacing or how despondent you are, or how depressed you are, or how hopeless everything seems, um, there's light at the end of the tunnel. And luckily, I was raised by optimistic parents. And so I'm that guy who, if I walk into a barn filled with defecation, I'm sure there's a pony in there somewhere. So it's being able to get back in touch with your hopeful self.
Lee, in a way, you sound like every Cal fan that's been looking for the Rose Bowl victory.
Yeah, remember, Zenny, our thing is one Rose Bowl before we leave.
Exactly.
Uh, as time goes on, it's looking less likely, but there's always next season.
That's right. Absolutely. My you may not know, my half sister uh, has been suffering from drug addiction since 2010. And I didn't discover until just a few months ago how deep it was, let alone that it existed. And my question to you is, how it's one thing for her to recognize it, but um, others have told me she has to recognize it on her own and has to ask for help rather than me doting.
That's right. Every person needs to hit their own individual bottom.
Mm,
From a matter of brain chemistry, what people who haven't struggled don't realize is the brain changes and it ends up getting rewired. And it almost looks at the addictive substance as breath itself, an autonomic function. It sends out cravings which override rational thought. So I'd be sitting in front of my condo in the trouble days, and I'd say, tonight, I'm not going to drink. And tonight's going to be different. And then magically, somehow, my car drove itself to the liquor store, and I came back with a big bottle of vodka. And so the point is, if willpower was all it took, I mean, I've shown a reasonable amount of willpower in my life. If but it's not. There has to be a psychic change, which involves a higher power, which involves understanding.
yeah, I think we froze for some particular reason, but hmm. I'm gonna refresh this, Lee, because somehow, for some reason, we froze. So hold on a second on this end. So I'm gonna refresh this thing. Hold on.
Come back, Jenny. McKenna? I don't know where he went.
What happened was it froze. You
Yeah.
froze on your end. We're back. Sorry about that. You froze on your end, so I went in to come out and come back out there. So it happens. At any rate, you were saying about yeah. Sorry about that. And thank you, Malika. Thank you.
That the brain gets rewired, and the only thing that will save somebody from the cravings is abstinence for a while, and then after a while the cravings fade, and then it's not an everyday struggle. It's not as if you have an angel on one side and a devil on the other competing moment to moment. It's as long as you're doing reasonable recovery activities and you can navigate your way through life gracefully.
And, I talked about my haps, but I have my own bottom too, and that has to do with, well, and I think this will resonate. I came from that 3 martini and lunch, society, and long story short, after I got my master's degree at Cal, one of the places I wanted to go to was the Balboa Cafe, owned by Gavin Newsom, our mutual friend, and that was the place where, long story short, I told Gavin once a long time ago that the best thing could probably happen to him was an industrial accident to mess up his face, because on Thursday nights, all the finest women you'd ever want to see lined up mainly to meet Gavin, and our thought was we can just get the droppings and get married from that, right? Didn't quite work out that way, but one of the habits was, well, drinking, and I realized in a very hard way that alcohol didn't really do with my system. It was in 2010 I realized it. It was New Year's Eve, went to the Balboa with my friend Dino, had the usual conversation. A lot of this is on video. And next morning, New Year's Day, I woke up, made a 4-hour workout, went back to the marina, went to the bus stop, went to Mauna Loa Cafe, the usual places, Balboa. And then I went back to the bus stop and I had 3 drinks called a screaming orgasm. That was okay. Okay. And next thing I know, I remember being at BART. I remember getting off BART. And then next thing I knew, I was in a hospital bed. And it was the next morning. And I don't know how I got there.
Did you black out?
Yeah. Kim Donovan, who worked for Pixar, who's a friend of mine to this day, found me in downtown Oakland and called 911. The ambulance took me to Highland. And that she took my camera, and I wound up meeting her. Pixar, gorgeous lady, gave me a great kiss, but it was my wake up call, because I didn't realize. I thought, what am I searching for? What am I trying to do here? And I thought, you might as well just face it, because the last time that happened before that was when I worked for the city of Oakland and the Super Bowl. And I thought I had to deal with Willie Brown to get, because you were helping us with that. But and I was celebrating. I went out, made the rounds, Harry's, Southside, all that. Wound up at Merchants in Oakland at 1:30 in the morning, and then the next thing I knew, I woke up at my wheel of the car, headed the wrong way up the freeway ramp onto the Nimitz. And I thought, wow. So I crashed my car to avoid a car. I didn't really have to do that. I had a beautiful black Ford Probe that I crashed. Wow. And so I called the cops. I said, yeah, I'm Zane Abraham, and I need your help. So they took me to the hospital, drew my blood. They took me to North County Jail because I was over the limit, they said. Jailer said, hey, haven't I seen you before? Said, aren't you working on the Super Bowl? I said, yeah. He goes, don't worry, I'll get you out of here. Got me out of here in 45 minutes. I was lucky. I should have died. I didn't. that was when I just realized, hey, you know what? What are you supposed to do here? That's not what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to be out doing that. You have a responsibility to other people. It was a hard wake up call. It really was. And so my point is that, I don't know if it was a mistake, Leigh. I still don't really understand how to evaluate it, except that it reminded me who relies on me, who I am important to. Um, and it was a hard lesson to learn. And I think your book can teach that to other people because you went not exactly the same way, but I think what draws us all together is we're all seeking the best we can be. And I guess maybe we go through stresses and we try to figure out how to get there. And uh, I still haven't figured out. I haven't figured it out. I know the Lord has been with me all the time, but beyond that, I don't. And I think you do have the calculus for it. I have to admit, Leigh, I don't. I'm trying to figure it out. I think I've got it. My mom's are my responsibility, which is a big reason I've got it. But that's about it.
Well, what happens in life is you get to a certain point where the children become the parents and the parents become the children. And it's psychologically destabilizing. I went through it with both of my parents. And you're so used to them being the rock in the center of your life. And the fact that they were struggling with health problems is very difficult. But it's just part of the cycle of life that we all have to go through. I mean, it will happen to everybody eventually.
Now, with the comeback, what part of the comeback, I can pick out a few, but I want to hear from you. What part of the comeback are you most proud of?
Being transparent about my experience. In other words, there's a stigma about alcoholism and addiction. But I'm not afraid to share with other people who are still struggling what I went through. And the book also tells the story of a series of athletes who went through experiences that maybe the public didn't know about. In other words, Troy Aikman wrote the foreword, and Troy got drafted number 1 in 1989 by the Dallas Cowboys, and they promised him he would be in charge of the franchise, the quarterback, and all the rest of it. And that lasted about a month because they used to have something called the supplemental draft, which meant that a team could pick a player who just recently found out he was eligible in a secondary draft that would forfeit their pick in the next year's draft. And they drafted Steve Walsh, who was a quarterback that had just won the national championship for
Miami.
For Jimmy Johnson,
Yes.
who's the new coach. So all of a sudden you're with a very talent-poor team, and yet you now have a quarterback controversy. And it's got Steve Young, who just wanted to play football and ended up thinking that he was going to replace Joe Montana, who was supposed to retire from a bad back. But he ended up being stuck for 3 years behind Montana, and how he dealt with that. And Warren Moon had a time in 1978 when there was still prejudice against the concept of a black person being the quarterback of a team, and he had to go to Canada for 6 years, but he came back to the NFL as the highest paid player, and he had a 17-year NFL career. And June Jones, the coach at the University of Hawaii, who fell asleep at the wheel, ran into a concrete stanchion. His aorta became separated. He broke like 26 bones, but ended up coaching the next year. So it's a variety of stories that all thematically fit. in terms of breaking denial, dealing with the reality, and being resilient and finding a way to come back and triumph in adversity.
And having good friends along the way, eh?
Right.
Yeah.
So again, I was helped by innumerable amounts of people. A rival agent when I was struggling financially, Dennis Gilbert came down to Newport Beach and gave me the money to reapply for my agent license. Uh, who knew?
Yeah. That's something else. That's incredible. Hey, well, is there ever going to be a sequel to Jerry Maguire?
I don't think so. It comes out in theaters in about a week for the 30-year anniversary. Cameron Crowe's been explicit on the fact he doesn't do sequels. So don't wait for it.
Wow. But let's talk about that 30-year. What do you most remember about not just the movie Jerry Maguire, but the experience of having it made and realizing that you were in it?
Well, the experience was writer-director Cameron Crowe calling me up back in 1983 and asking if I would be willing to let him shadow me and be a bug on the wall and go through experiences so he could put together a character that'd be a sports agent. So he went to the NFL draft in 1993, where I had Drew Bledsoe drafted. He came up to the press conference in Boston with Bill Parcells. He came to the league meetings. He came to a series of games with me. He came to Pro Scouting Day at SC, came to my Super Bowl parties, spent hours in my office, and I told him lots and lots of stories. And then my job as technical advisor was to vet the script. So the willing suspension of disbelief that holds you in a motion picture didn't get broken. You knew the dialogue was real and the look was real. And then you assigned me some actors. So I took Cuba Gooding Jr. with me down to the Super Bowl in Phoenix, and he had to stay in role and pretend he was a client of mine.
But that was fun.
He hung out with
Rod Tidwell.
He hung out with Desmond Howard and Amani Toomer. I actually had to show the quarterback in the film, played by Jerry O'Connell, how to throw a spiral, because he had gone to NYU and they didn't have a football program there. So, it's been 30 years and I still virtually every day walk into a restaurant or an airport or somewhere and someone runs up to the table and shouts those words that start with "show me
the money." Hey, who came up with that? Is that just written in there, or was that something that Cuba Gooding come up with, or was that you, or where did that come from?
So we're in Palm Desert at the league meetings, and I'm showing around a free agent named Tim McDonald, the safety who played for Arizona and later San Francisco.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Cameron was interviewing him, and they were up in his hotel room, and Lou Dobbs and CNN's Money Line was on in the background. And Cameron said, "What are you looking for in this experience, Tim?" And Tim said, "I'm looking for a team to show me winning because I never had it. I'm looking for a team to show me a future. I'm looking for a team." And then he gestured towards the screen. And either Cameron wrote it or Tim said it. I wasn't there. Show me the money.
That's where there it is. Hey, folks, this is your separate video about where the Show Me the Money came from. Outstanding. But Leigh, the ultimate movie about you has not been written or made yet, but it's written every single year. And that's your Super Bowl parties. I mean, have you ever thought of doing a documentary around how that started and how it's grown? Because that's a story in itself, and it speaks to all the great people that you've had in your life, and it's just a fantastic experience.
Well, so the Super Bowl has become a convention of Americana. Big business, politics, sports, entertainment, all in the same city. So I try to combine those groups in a setting. It's a daytime party with ambient sound. You can network, you can meet people. And then we thought, how many utilities can we build from this? Can we do humanitarian awards that highlight what people in pro football do to make a difference in their communities? Can we do a brain health summit, which we did 2 hours this year, with neurologists talking about the dangers of athletic concussion? Can we help a charity? So last year in New Orleans, we had the Urban League, and we were able to give them enough money, a single mother enough money to move in the first home she'll ever own. Another year, we sent a water machine from Miami down to earthquake-stricken Haiti, where they were dying of cholera. And we sent a water machine that purified the water for 140,000 people a day. Um, and and then I've been active in the new modalities of health and wellness that are biomed breakthroughs, and some of them are can amp athletic performance in critical situations. Others can rehab players quicker. And then for the rest of us, anybody over 35 or 40, they prolong life. So that's stem cells and hyperbaric, and we've talked about this before. And so we highlight all of those, and so it started in 1985 when the Super Bowl was in the Bay Area, and it was at my house in Berkeley, and so we had a couple hundred people there, and the next morning I wake up and there's still guests who are sleeping in the living room. And, but it's more from that event into
Hey, was one of them named Mike Silver?
3 to 5,000 people, and trying to make an impact, educate people, do some good.
Leigh, it's outstanding story and something else, and I can't wait for the next chapter. Uh, and thank you for the time and talking and the advice you give to people and help. Any closing thoughts you want to offer?
No, simply that my dad used to say, when you're looking for someone to make a change in the world or deal with a problem, as minor as picking up a piece of trash or as major as fighting racism or domestic violence, the tendency is to wait for the amorphous they or them to do it. Older people, political figures, business people. And he would say, son, if you wait for the they or them, you could wait forever. The they is you, you're the they. And we all have something to contribute to the world. It could be good parenting, it could be making a difference, but this is our watch and our time, and we need to do whatever we can improve to make it a better world.
Oh, real quick, you have two clients that are technically on a comeback of their own. One of them is Patrick Mahomes. The other is Tua Tagovailoa with the Falcons. Forecast me how you think they're going to come along this year.
Well, Tua is represented by Chris Cabot, but Tua will eventually reemerge. And remember, football's situational in that you might fail in one situation but be great in another system. So I think he'll get a recharge. Patrick is using the same techniques. He's always used self-discipline and the rest of it to recover. And I predict you can't predict when, whether or not it'll actually extend into the season, but he's doing everything in his power to give himself the best chance to rehab.
You think Eric Bieniemy is going to make a massive difference?
I think he's a talented coach. I can't believe he's not been a head coach yet.
Oh, amen. Amen. Leigh, hey, thanks a lot. And I'll close this off. You don't have to worry about it. Folks, thank you so very much. Share this around. Remember to get the comeback and by Doubleday, I believe. And we'll be back. That ends this stream. And oh, by the way, Leigh, go Bears.
Go Bears.
Go Bears. How was that, Leigh?